Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the CFR training for the fiscal year 2021-2022 Consolidated Fiscal Report. We have a decent-sized crowd today with approximately 700 attendees, so hopefully you don't have any issues with WebEx. Both the webinars will be recorded and posted on YouTube, so if you have a colleague that couldn't make it or you want to listen to the training again, you will be able to. We will be sending out an email to all the providers notifying them of when they're available and where they can be found. My name is Ken Glenmire, a representative from OPWDD, and I will be the host for the two webinars we have scheduled this week. Today's New York State representatives will be as follows. Representing OASIS is Paul Green and Paul Sutton. Representing OMH is Richard Brooks, Michelle Chalinsky, Kathy Katz, and Lisa Vickery. Also representing OPWDD will be Francis Vasilio, Alpa Amin, and Emily Seward. Representing SED will be Nellie Gutos and John Hart. And then representing Department of Health will be Jeffrey Nickerson. Also, I want to get this out there. We have a survey that will pop up at the end of the event. We would greatly appreciate you taking the time to fill out the surveys so that we can continue to make these trainings better. Session 1 is today, and that session will cover getting started, introduction to the CFRS web, which is new, and then core reporting CFR 1s through DMH1. So this slide is very important. I have disabled the chat function because it gets a little cluttered, but we do request that if you have any questions to use the Q&A function in the webinar. It's on your right-hand side of your screen, and you might have to click the arrow next to the Q&A to open up the dialog box. If you don't see that dialog box, it might be hidden, so you're gonna have to click the 3 dots at the bottom right of the WebEx and then click the Q&A. Ask your questions in here. We will research them and post the answers online at the website listed above has previous questions and answers, so feel free to go there as well. But hopefully short time after the event, we will be posting the answers to the questions you have today. This is always a good slide to know. Probably print it for your desk, especially if you have multiple state agencies that you work with. This shows how to contact each agency. Most of us are still working a hybrid schedule too, so we're in office, but sometimes we're remote. So all the agencies are still preferring email contact. It's the best way to get an answer. So we definitely would prefer email. Also, New York State Office of Children and Family Services providers may submit their questions regarding their CFR submission to the OMH CFR unit. Any claims questions can go to the following. As noted on the previous slide, email still would be the preferred method. By the end of the seminar, we're hoping to accomplish the following goals. We want to introduce providers to the CFR manual and also the CFRS web, which this reporting period will be the first to go through that. We also want to provide New York State agencies contact information for specific questions not covered during this training. We want to help providers become familiar with the CFR core reports. And then we also want to discuss important policies, principles, and rules regarding completion of the CFR. I will now pass this on to our first presenter.
Oh, thank you, Ken. This is Paul Sutton from the New York State Office of Addiction Services and Supports. And now we'll be going through how to get started with the CFR. The CFR manual contains 9 general overview sections with a section for each of the core, claiming, and supplemental schedules. There are numerous appendices containing detailed information as well. It's important to read the first 9 sections of the manual before beginning work on the CFR. The CFR is available online at the SED website, and you can find, in addition to the manual, you can find the appendices and extension request as well as a transmittal letter, and it's free to download as a PDF. The CFR is used as a year-end cost report that documents service provider expenses and revenues on one consolidated report and is shared by the 6 New York State agencies. Cost report information is used for rate and fee setting, as well as cost of living increases and fiscal analysis and policy development by the New York State agencies, the legislature, and the governor's office. The cost reports, as referred to as the core schedules, consist of the CFR 1 through 6, as well as the DMH-1. The claiming schedules are the DMH-2 and 3, and these schedules are the basis of your state aid and or local contract payment. Full accrual accounting must be used when reporting fiscal information on the schedules CFR 1 through 6, the DMH-1, as well as the COVID-19S informational schedules. The claiming schedules DMH-2 and 3 may be completed on an accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis. Those of you that file a mini abbreviated CFR may complete all required schedules on accrual, modified accrual, or the cash basis of accounting. The goal of accrual accounting is to account in the periods in which they occur, the effects of transactions and other events and circumstances to the extent that those financial effects are recognizable and measurable. Revenue is recognized and recorded when earned, and expenses are recognized and recorded as they are incurred. Units of service are counted when provided, and your personal services are reported in the period incurred, not when you issue your paychecks. Note that your CFR may not match your quarterly payroll reports. There are 4 types of CFR submissions: full, abbreviated, Article 28 abbreviated, and mini abbreviated. The type of CFR you must complete depends on the type of programs operated and the amount and type of funding received from the state agencies. You should review the submission matrices in Section 2 of the CFR manual to determine the type of submission required. When a service provider is funded by more than one state agency, the most stringent reporting requirements apply for all filings. Section 2 of the CFR manual contains 5 matrices for determining the correct CFR submission type for your agency. Select the applicable matrix and answer a series of yes or no questions to determine the correct CFR submission type to prepare. For purposes of determining submission requirements, Medicaid managed care is considered to be Medicaid. Section 2 also contains notes relating to specific agency reporting requirements and exceptions. These matrices change often and should be reviewed on a yearly basis. CFR reporting periods are generally based on the geographic location of a service provider's corporate headquarters. This training covers the July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022 fiscal year reporting period. All programs operated during this time should be reported on this year's CFR. If your agency has a contract for one or more programs funded on a period different than your agency's standard CFR reporting period, an additional mini abbreviated may be required for the non-standard filing period. The additional CFR will use the reporting period specified by the contract. The most common off-cycle contracts are for special legislative grants, also known as member items. For example, a service provider has its corporate headquarters in Manhattan and operates programs in both Manhattan and Westchester must submit their primary CFR on the standard reporting period of July 1st through June 30th. This service provider would complete the CFR detailing expenses and revenues for all programs in operation during that time period, including the Westchester programs. Further, they must also submit a secondary mini-abbreviated on the July 1st through December 31st reporting period for the programs funded by Westchester only. Due dates for your CFRs are as follows. For OMH and SED, your CFR is due November 1st. A 30-day extension request is due before that date. For all other state agencies, your CFR is due by December 1st. Now, there are various penalties, enacted by each of the state agencies for the late filing of your submissions. For OASIS, we have various fines and sanctions available, if you don't file on time. These sanctions may include the imposition of fines, withholding your advance payments, and ultimately the termination of state aid. Now, if you are to, get yourself up to compliance, you would then get that state aid back. For OMH providers who submit late, providers who receive payments from Medicaid for OMH certified program services can have their payments temporarily withheld. Pursuant to Part 52 of the New York State RR, their Medicaid payments will be reduced by 20% for the first month under sanction. Such reduction will be increased in each subsequent month by 10% until you've received a satisfactory CFR from your agency. Note that all funds will be returned once the provider becomes compliant. For OPWD filers, if the CFR, the financial statements, and the certification pages are not uploaded or received in Albany by the due date, providers are subject to a financial penalty of 2% of Medicaid billings until the first of the month following compliance. If the CFR, the financial statements, and the certifications are not received by February 1st, a 50% penalty for waiver programs will become effective on August 1st, 2023. Note that with OPWDD penalties, these are not refunded after providers come into compliance. This will go into more detail in the OPWDD only section to follow. For SED filers, interest expense on working capital loans for late filers of required financial information will be reimbursed on a prorated basis if submitted within 90 days of January 1st. No interest expense will be reimbursed for entities that file reports more than 90 days late. If your agency is funded through an LGU contract, check with the County, New York City for their specific requirements regarding CFR and final claim submissions. Your LGUs may require a submission due date earlier than the New York State agency prescribed due date. New York State agency CFR requirements are the minimal requirements regarding CFR submissions, whereas LGU requirements can be stricter but can never be more lenient. Note that sending copies of your certification schedules to the county or local DDRO does not fulfill your requirement with the state agencies. You still must forward these certifications to the state agency as well. Your CFRs are prepared and submitted using the CFRS web. Once it becomes available, the link will be posted on the OMH website as below. In addition to the submission of the CFR, the certification pages, agency financial statements, and parent agency allocation backup data should be submitted through CFRS web. Additional instructions in uploading the certification pages to the web will be discussed later in this presentation. Please do not mail paper copies of the CFR core schedules to the CFR 1 through DMH1 to New York State Agency CFR units in Albany. Please save yourself the postage and just upload them. The CFRS web is the preferred method of submitting certifications. In addition, OMH, OASIS, OPWDD, and SED will continue to accept emailed PDF copies of all required certifications. OMH, OPWDD, and SED will also accept paper copies of the applicable certification schedules. Note that DOH and OCFS will only accept certifications that are electronically uploaded. When a revised CFR is uploaded, a provider is required to submit revised certification schedules complete with the new DCN number as follows. For OASIS, a new CFR I, II, III, and IV are required. Note that subsequent to a CFR II being received, OASIS will accept an attestation reporting minor changes in lieu of an additional II. For SED, a new CFR I and II is required. All other agencies require only a new CFR I. If submitting emailed copies of certifications, OASIS and OPWD filers must submit their PDF certifications in the following format. Note that OMH and SED do not require a specific file name, when sending electronic copies. It is preferred that consolidated financial statements, including all affiliates, be submitted electronically as PDF files through CFRS Web. In addition, financial statements reflecting information on the provider as a standalone entity should be uploaded if available. Providers that are required to have a single audit based on uniform guidance and compliance supplement must upload a copy of the audit report to the funding agency via CFRS Web. And your financial statement should only be uploaded one time per fiscal reporting period unless there are changes. Do not upload draft financial statements. And those of you that file mini abbreviations are not required to submit financials at all. Prior period financial statements can also be submitted electronically. It is preferred that CPA audited financials correspond to the CFR reporting period. However, if your agency's fiscal year is different than the reporting period, submit the financial statements with an end date that falls within that period. It is recommended that the audited and certified financial statements include the prior year's data and the presentations of the balance sheet and income statement for comparison. Tips on record keeping. Program payroll and fringe benefits should be reconciled to the general ledger on a monthly or quarterly basis. Expenses and revenues should be monitored on a regular basis and compared against approved budgets. Internal financial reporting systems should be structured to capture the cost categories that are included in the CFR. Units of service provided by programs should be tracked on a regular basis. Non-allowable costs should be tracked on a regular basis for easy identification when preparing the CFR. Program descriptions and unit of service definitions can be found in appendices E, F, G, H, HH, and II. A list of some but not all non-allowable costs can be found in Appendix X. Now, what is a non-allowable cost? A cost must be reasonable and or necessary for providing services in both its nature and amount. In determining the reasonableness of a given cost, consideration will be given to whether the cost incurred as rendering the services are generally recognized as ordinary and necessary for the operation of the organization. All non-allowable costs that are included as an expense on any line of your CFR schedules must be reported on the adjustments not allowable cost line of the applicable schedule. The following are some examples of non-allowable costs that must be adjusted out of the reported costs. Costs that are not properly related to patient care and principally for diversion, amusement, or entertainment. Costs related to the purchase of alcoholic beverages. Costs resulting from violations of or failure to comply with federal, state, and government laws. And training costs for staff training that does not directly relate to the fulfillment of the required duties. And also note that expenses which are acceptable per GAAP and IRS may or may not be reimbursable. Related party transactions. The allowable cost of a related party transaction is the lower of the related organization's actual cost or the fair market value of providing the goods or services supplied. All related party transactions, as well as entity-wide agency administration, must be disclosed and detailed in the Schedule CFR 5. All excess related party transactions included as an expense on any line of any schedule must be reported on the adjustments or non-allowable cost line. Fringe benefit expenses that are not reasonable and available to all employees are non-allowable and must be adjusted out of reported costs on the applicable schedule. Non-allowable fringe benefits costs include, but not limited to, supplemental executive retirement plans or any non-qualified deferred compensation plans. And now we will introduce the CFR Web, and I will pass this off to our next speaker.
Thank you, Paul. This is the moment you've all been waiting for. Instead of downloading a program onto your computer, the latest version of the CFR program, we're now going to shift to where you're going to log in through the internet and prepare your CFR on our servers. This will avoid some of the problems we've been having with people with firewalls and operating systems that don't comport with our programming. So, just as the desktop version was one platform that you prepare a CFR that includes all the information for the 6 participating CFR state agencies, you're going to create the CFR through CFR Web that will include all that information, including also your claiming information in the DMH schedules. It's come to our attention that some people were creating a separate claiming schedules outside the CFR and just submitting those to the district offices. So you'll create one CFR to include all the information for all the agencies, including any claiming schedules. In order to create the CFR, you're going to need information about your agency and about the programs you operate and which state agencies fund them. The program itself is updated every 6 months, and it knows which programs are active during which period, which funding source codes are active, et cetera, but you can use the current program to look back and make revisions in previous CFRs. The plan is for all 21-22 fiscal CFRs to be created using CFRS Web. At the same time, once the new CFRS Web is made active, that's how you will also revise previously submitted CFRs. All the CFRs that have been uploaded to us since 2012 will be available for you to enter, review, and edit, and resubmit if necessary. Signature pages, the certifications, the financial statements should all be uploaded using CFRS Web. That will provide you, as you'll see later, with a record of what you've provided to us for each period. When CFRS Web is activated, the desktop will no longer be active. So if you're in the middle of doing a revision of a previously submitted CFR and you haven't validated and uploaded it, you're going to lose all that work. So we're going to be giving you some notice when the time's coming, and you need to wrap up the work that you've got in progress and get it loaded. Once it's loaded, it'll be preserved and you'll be able to access it. The plan is for CFRS Web to be active, go live in mid-August, and that's coming rapidly. If you're attempting to use the CFRS Web and you need technical assistance, this is the phone number you would call. It's the same helpline that you would call if you were having problems getting the desktop program to work on your computer. Keep in mind that all of this with the CFRS Web will take place after your executive director has signed a CNDA, which will be emailed to them. Once the executive director registers, then he'll assign security managers and the whole process will begin. We still are going to continue to have the CFR announcement list, which is accessed through the OMH website. And this is important, especially as we're moving to the new internet-based CFRS Web, that every agency should have at least one, preferably more than one person registered to receive announcements about this new process. As I mentioned before, there'll be at least one security manager for each provider agency. The executive director will designate one or more security managers. One of them may be the executive director, his or herself. We recommend that you have more than one so that if the security manager is away on vacation or wins lotto, whatever, there's someone else who can assign roles when needed and make changes in the roles that have been assigned. If a staff member has been assigned a role and needs to have that role upgraded in order to get something accomplished, it's through the security manager that such changes will be implemented. The roles I mentioned there are 3 roles beyond being a security manager. The first level is a reviewer. This is someone who can get into your agency's CFR and take a look at it, review the information for accuracy. This may be the role that you give a CPA if you don't expect them to make any changes in your CFR itself. The CPA I'm talking about wouldn't be a member of your staff. You can assign roles to non-staff members as well. The preparer role allows a person to create CFRs. It also allows them to go into already created and possibly upload or submitted CFRs and to make revisions. The last role is a submitter. The submitter can review, they can prepare and edit, they can also submit the CFR once it's completed and it has a DCN. That role is also the role necessary to submit the supporting documentation. So once again, we would advise that you have more than one person with submitter status, because when deadlines come and you need to get something at the last minute submitted to us, a financial statement or a certification, and the one person you have with the submitter role is unavailable, then you're in trouble. CFR Web has a home page. At the beginning, at the top of the page, you'll see an announcement board. This is similar to the kind of announcements you would get if you enroll with our announcement mailing list. The issue is, though, you only get to see these messages from us once you've logged into the CFR web. So we anticipate many of you won't be looking in on that all that frequently during the course of the year. So you should register with the announcement mailing list, but there'll also be announcements here. Lower on that homepage is the this CFR web homepage are different directions you can take. You see here creating a submission, reviewing a submission, uploading submission and supporting documents, and helpful links. Depending on the role you've been assigned, you may or may not be able to access each of these different options. If you only have reviewer, the reviewer role, then you won't be able to create a new submission, so that'll be grayed out as opposed to the yellow buttons that you see. If you want to create a new submission and you have that authority, you have preparer or submitter authority, you can press the button to create a new submission. Then there's some questions you have to answer. You designate the type of CFR, you designate which of the state agencies funds you, whether you're creating a calendar or fiscal CFR and for the period. And there's a question, would you like to carry forward data from a prior submission? This is the equivalent of importing last year's CFR and changing the submission definition. Once you've completed all that, you'll hit the next button. And you see here, it takes you to the home page for your agency with all the information about your agency. This is carried forward because you're all going to be registered for a particular provider agency, and so you see the address, the agency code, all that information is already there. Oh, I went. In most instances, you're going to choose to carry forward the information from a previous CFR. What you'll do then is it will take you to where you can select which CFR you want to carry forward. It'll only show you the most recent CFR submitted for each period. In most cases, if you're creating a 21-22 CFR, you'll want to carry forward the last CFR submitted for the period 2021. When you're creating a new submission, just like with the desktop, you have the option of bringing forward all data or master data only. Once you've selected which one, you see the dot is filled in there for the most recent from the previous period. You then answer that question as to whether you want all data or master data. At that point, if you haven't selected all the state agencies that are in that previous CFR, you'll get this message that appears here that tells you you forgot, or the previous CFR had, say, OPWDD check was part of it, and you didn't check that this year. That may be intentional. You may have stopped doing business with us. or it may have been an oversight. If it's an oversight, you hit the back button, go back and revise which state agencies are to be included in the new CFR. If you have selected all the same agencies, you don't have any issues, when it creates a new submission, you'll get this message telling you the carry forward is complete. So a new CFR has been created, doesn't have a DCN, it's got information from the previous CFR. One thing that does not carry forward, just like the desktop, is that you have to go in and enter the beginning date of the financial statements for your organization and the end date of those financial statements. You will not be able to validate until you've taken care of this step. So you go right here, and that icon there at the upper right part of your screen is a calendar. Looks more like a lunchbox to me, but anyway, you click on that and the calendar pops up, and then you mark the month and date and the year of the beginning of your statement and also the end of your financial statement. Once you've created the new CFR, you should verify that all the information is still correct. Here's a listing of program site definitions that exist in the newly created CFR. You see to the right, those little icons. The top one is a pencil. That's if you click on that if you need to make some kind of editing. If you no longer are operating a program, you would click that icon under that's a garbage can, and you would delete that program from the new submission. So if you need to add a new program for this CFR that you didn't have previously, you would click the Add a Program button in the top right. You would click the state agency that funds your program, and then you would use the drop down on that first line to select which program it is that you're going to be using, going to be adding to your CFR. Next schedule moves on from there. Now, we realize that we made this so easy for you that we're afraid that some of you may fall asleep and take a nap while you have it open on your desk, or you may just go out to lunch. And if you're in a CFR that you're working on it, no one else in your organization is going to be able to get in and make any edits to that CFR. So keep in mind that after 30 minutes of inactivity, you'll be logged out, basically, of that CFR. And at that point, another person on your staff could get in to enter different information if they had any to do. Once you've come back from lunch or woken up, and you want to continue your work on the CFR, you will go to continue submission and upload completed CFRs. It's the yellow button you would choose is View in Progress CFRs. That's the button off the home page that takes you in there. While you're in the CFR, there'll be a note that'll display on your home page that'll let people know who's working on it, so that if somebody else wants to get in, they'll know that Jane's got it opened already, so I can't get in to do any editing. All the work in progress CFRs appear. Once you've come back, you want to get back in. If you've got more than one open, suppose someone's making corrections for one period CFR and you're creating the next period CFR, that could easily be the case. And you see it says work in progress to the right, and you would choose which one that you want to get back into. you then have a choice to make. Are you going in just to view, or are you going in to edit? If you choose view at this point, you will not be able to make any changes to that CFR. If you do want to be able to make changes to the CFR you're looking at, you would select edit. Here's the warning that tells you once you go into edit, no one else will be able to go into that same CFR to edit. And you would go ahead and agree to that. The next step here gives you options as to how you want to proceed. If you select yes, you get these choices. So you can continue to edit, stop the edit, or delete the transmission. You see down there underneath those three yellow buttons is where it says who's currently in the CFR. And it may be yourself. It pops up there when you went back in. If you choose continue to edit, it'll direct you to the provider agency information sheet. If you choose to stop your edit so that someone else can get in, you can choose that button. It'll tell you with this warning message here that once you ended, the document's available for other members of your team. You would agree to that. If you choose to delete the submission, you're going to get this warning. Are you really sure you want to get rid of this? Then delete it, because once you do, it's not recoverable. So don't just hop through these different messages that pop up on your screen. If you want to look at all the CFRs that are in the work in progress, you can see here one of these for the 18-19 period has already gotten its DCN assigned, but has not yet been submitted. The other two have not gotten their DCN assigned, so there's nothing appears there other than it says it's a work in progress. So if you select, you want to go to the one that says DCN assigned but not yet submitted, you're going to choose to view it, edit it, or submit it. If you choose to edit it or view again, will only allow you to look at the data. It won't allow you to make any amendments to it. If you choose edit, you'll get a warning that that once you open it up to edit it, you'll lose that DCN that was assigned, similar to what the warning you get on the desktop version. And you have to agree, yes, to go back in there to edit it. The other option is to submit the CFR. Just because it's created on our servers, until you submit it to us, it's not something for us to be able to review. It doesn't meet your filing deadline requirements. You have to, basically by submitting, you're saying it's ready to go, it's our best effort, and it's available for all of you, or for the state agencies to review. So the other key thing here is you have to have submitter status. So the security manager had to have designated you to have submitter status. Otherwise, that button won't be available for you, and you won't be able to submit to us to meet your filing requirement. Once you've submitted successfully, you'll get this message appear that says it was successfully submitted on the date, and you can hit the submission dashboard to go back to the home page. If you choose to revise the CFR and upload documents, which is normally your next step after you've uploaded the CFR, you have to give us supporting documentation. So you would go to the previously loaded submissions. You would pick out the one that you want to upload supporting information for. Here you narrow it down. You say, are you looking at CFRs or budgets or either or, and you can make that selection there. And then you have a list here. It tells you what date these different CFRs were submitted. You see the DCN in the first column. So at this point, you select the one that you wanted. You can either view or revise that submission. If you choose, if you're progressing on to the upload, you choose to revise, I believe. Revising a submission tells you once you go in, no one else will be able to go in. You say yes to that. You're still in work in progress here. You see the note down there. It's telling you you can't create a new one. You can't revise an older CFR if there's a newer one already there. Only one revision for each reporting period is available for you to edit. If you're going to upload the supporting documentation, the financial statements, the certification pages, the parent agency admin allocation information, you will go in through review and revise CFRs and upload documents. That's the title of that field. And you see here, you pick which one it is you want to upload the information for. And then you can select which piece of information you're uploading. You can upload the financial statement. By the way, a consolidated financial statement, some CPAs prepare things that call them consolidated, but they really only have the information for one entity with a single EIN. That's really a single, that's really a standalone financial statement. Consolidated financial statement has subsidiaries with different corporate IDs, all their information put together in one financial statement. When you're uploading certification pages, some of you upload each different certification page separately. You don't have to do that. You can select like the I, the double I, the triple I, all select all the buttons and have one PDF that you can upload. It's only the IV that is should be uploaded separately from the other certifications. So you select what it is, you hit the upload button. You see here towards the bottom of the screen there, you get a successfully uploaded message back to you. Again, the advantage of doing all this through CFRS Web is that there'll be a record of it that you can look at for each reporting period and for each DCN. Now, just because you upload a certification doesn't mean you uploaded the correct certification. You might have clicked on the wrong PDF, or you might not have signed or dated the CFR certification page that you uploaded. Then you'll get notified by the state agencies for corrections, but it will say you did upload one, whether it was valid or not. You see here for the financial statement, when you're uploading that one, you again hit the calendar icon to mark watch the end date of that financial statement. here we've got an example from the CFR. You see for each of those DCN, or for that DCN, it tells you which certifications you uploaded. And you can upload, if we tell you that, oh, you forgot to date your CFR III, and you got one back from the county with their signature on it, you can go back in and upload another one at a later time. In addition to those buttons I described, there's also a helpful link portion, which you can go to the different state agency CFR website pages, or to the manual, or to the training information. It's the SED website that includes copies of the manuals and appendices for each reporting period, going back several reporting periods in case you need to go back and look up something for a revision. This is also where, for SED and OMH, you can go in to get the 30-day extension to move your deadline from May 1st to June 1st. For the other agencies, June 1st is the deadline. The OMH website is where you go to register with the announcement mailing list. There's also going to be information available there for the training which is being conducted, and you would click on there. There's also some contact information there for the different CFR units, and all of that is available through the OMH website. I'm now going to hand you off to the next presenter, if I can do this correctly. I'm looking for his name. There it is.
Good morning, folks. My name is Paul Green. I'm from the Office of Addiction Services and Supports. Very good, Francis. That's a lot of information. It's interesting information. You did a good job with that. The next thing to consider is the menu. Previously, when you would enter the software, the first screen you would see would be the CFRS navigation screen, and you got good at navigating through it. It showed you all the schedules that you needed to complete, and it showed you all the things within the CFR that you wanted to do. Well, that has been changed to, now it's called the menu. The menu icon is found in the top left corner of any page in the CFRS web. Once selected, the expanded menu will be visible on the left side of the screen. So on the left side of my screen right now is a picture of the menu. The home and the dashboard, Francis has already spoke about. The submission and submission details we'll get into later. So the first place it takes you when you enter this is the provider agency definition. That's the section, and it's underlined by a gold bar showing you that's where it is. Okay. You're going to go through the process of completing the provider agency definition, and when you are done with that process, you're going to click on the next schedule, or the previous schedule for that matter, if you wish to go forward or advance. Currently, it is in the order of recommended completion. Okay, so you'll see that the CFR4 is before the CFR1 because the data from the 4 flows to the 1. So this is the recommended order. However, you can go out of order. You can jump around as much as you'd like. Okay. So first thing with the provider agency definition is you need to have this type of information to complete that. 5-digit agency code number, legal name, street address, ownership type, federal employer ID, and the period covered by the agency's audited financial statements. A lot of this information will be transferred over, But if you were brand new and you were starting from scratch, you would have to enter all that information. This is a screenshot of what it looks like after you've entered all the information. Okay. Once all the the provider agency information is complete, you'll hit the next button, and that brings you to the program site definition. Okay. As Francis mentioned, a lot of the program sites will transfer in if you choose for them to. You can then go in and edit them or delete them or click on the Add button and add new ones. The information you're going to need for this is you're going to need to know which state agencies belong to which program sites, what the 4-digit program code is, the 2-digit index code, the program site identification number called the site code, and OASIS calls it the PRU number. Okay. Refer to Section 8 of the manual for more information. The physical address and the county in which each defined program site operates. Okay. Once you have completed the programs, you're going to click on the next, and it's going to bring you to the certifications, which is the CFRI, IIIA, III, and IV. Okay, so you're just going down the list, and the CFRI, this is a screenshot of it completed, but basically it's 4 sections of information. It's information about the fiscal contact. That's the person who knows the most about the CFR and its preparation. Okay. After that is the executive director, the person who's responsible for signing the CFR, the president/chair of the board, and then the claims section. Each one of these sections is going to have information on it. If it transferred in, you're going to have to verify the information and make any changes necessary. Personnel change, addresses change, phone numbers change, email addresses, and such. At the end of each section, there is a box. It says, please check the box if the person to contact changed from the prior reporting period. That is so that we can update our records with the most current contact information. So check the box at the end of each one. So now that you've input the fiscal contact information, the executive director information, the president information, the last section is the claims contact information. You could again type it in, or you could click on copy contact, and it will automatically populate it with the information from the fiscal contact. Okay. Once you've completed the CFRI, down at the bottom right, you'll click Next Schedule, and it'll bring you on. But let's just summarize quickly. The CFRI must be signed by the Executive Director, CEO. A CFRI schedule signed by anyone other than the noted parties may not be acceptable. The CFRI requires contact information on the agency's fiscal contact and president, chair of the board of directors. It should be uploaded via CFRS web, where it will be distributed accordingly to each New York State agency represented on the CFR, and the signed schedule must have the same DCN as a submitted CFR. So that uploading is really what we're pushing forward going forward. Francis showed you a section where you can review all your uploaded certifications, okay? That will only be true if you electronically uploaded them through the CFRS web. If you email them to us or send paper copies to some of the state agencies, they will not be logged into CFRS web, and there will not be a record of them there. They will only be stored in our files. Okay. CFR IIIA Accountant's Report. So this is the information about your accounting agency. Again, it needs to be checked for accuracy. Sometimes people change location. Sometimes they change accountants. Okay. It's required for most full CFR submissions. It should be signed by an independent certified public accountant, sole practitioner, partner of the CPA firm, or CPA firm that audited and certified the CFR. CFR II/IIA should be uploaded via CFRS web, where it will be distributed. The signed schedule must have the same DCN as the CFR submitted, and adhere to audit examination guidelines. See Appendix AA of the CFR manual. So the CFRI was signed by the executive director, and every time you upload a new CFR, you have to submit a new CFRI. The CFR IIA is a little different in that we understand that you are paying an accountant to certify this, okay? So if you send us the first one, but then make a change to a CFR due to CFR review questions or such, assuming that the change is a minor in nature, you probably will not need to upload a new CFR II to certain agencies. So Section 2 of the CFR manual will give you exact information on this. However, unless it's major changes are a little bit different, but for minor changes, OPWDD and OMH do not require a new CFR II, okay, or IIA. OASIS will, if you've already submitted a II once, then they will accept an attestation from the executive director stating what the differences are in lieu of a new CFR II. Okay, so for those three agencies, you do not need a new II. SED at this point does require a new II. Again, you can refer to the Section 2 of the CFR manual for additional information on that. Now, what is the difference between a II and IIA? If your financial statements are on the same reporting period as the CFR is, then you submit a CFR II. If the financial statements are on a different reporting period than a CFR, then that's a IIA. Okay? So if your financials are calendar year and your CFR is calendar, it'd be a CFR II. Counties and other municipalities have three options for CPA certification of full CFR submission types. They can submit the II, the IIA, or the compliance review. Please review Appendix CC in the CFR manual for more information on the compliance review. CFR III, first of all, it's only required if you're receiving state aid funding. Okay. This is a screenshot of how you're going to complete it in the CFRS web. But to be honest with you, once you've completed the CFRI, the executive director information all carries over to the III. So there usually isn't much to be completed in the III. Okay. It needs to be completed if you have aid to localities, state aid. Okay. If the funding is through a direct contract with your executive director, CEO, must sign the left side of the certification statement designated for voluntary local service provider. So again, there's three sections in the CFR III. If it's a direct contract, the executive signs the far left. If funded through a local county contract, the left side of the certification must be signed by the executive director, and the right side of the certification must be signed by the county director of community mental health services. Okay, so 2 signatures are required. Now, after the executive director has signed it, they're going to forward it on to the county for the director of community mental health services to sign it. At that time, we would probably recommend that you send a copy to us, because if a month goes by and we do not have it, we'd like to know where the holdup is. And if the executive director has signed it and sent a copy to us, then we know that that it's sitting with the county director waiting for their signature. Okay. For counties must have the middle section of the certification signed by the county treasurer and the right side of the certification signed by the director of community mental health services. Okay. The CFR III should be uploaded via CFRS web. It must have the same DCN number as a submitted CFR. And as we said, after the executive director signs it, send a copy to us at the same time that you're sending it off to the county for their signature. Okay. So the last certification is the CFR-IV. It's called the Supplemental Attestation Schedule. It is required for full abbreviated Article 28 abbreviated CFR submissions. It's a series of questions, yes, no, or not applicable, regarding the agency's fiscal status. Okay, so each one you have to go through and use the drop down to make your selection. It's very important. It was added for an important reason. The CFR-IV schedule is used to report agency identifying data and serves as a certification statement by the service provider's chief executive officer, attesting to the validity of the information contained in the document. Under penalties prescribed in accordance with Article 175 of New York State Penal Law, false written statements. In other words, under penalty of perjury. Okay. So it's important for us to know the fiscal status of the agency, and it's important for the executive director to know that they are signing this and that they are opening themselves up to liability if it is not accurate. Okay. Not to scare you, but that's the truth. To follow up, the CFR-IV is not required for SED-only CFR filers, governmental service providers, or mini abbreviated CFRs. Okay. So I will transfer now to the next presenter.
Hi, good morning. This is Michelle Chilinsky at the Office of Mental Health. Next, we'll be going over Schedule CFR 4 Personal Services Program Site. The schedule is completed for all 4 CFR submission types. Report the salaries and wages of your direct employees by position title code on this schedule. Note that there are 2 sections to complete. First, complete the program site, program admin, LGU admin section. To start, select the state agency, program, and site from the drop-down menus. Next, select the position title code and standard work week from the drop-down menus. Then enter the annual hours paid and the annual amount paid for that position title code. The FTE will auto-calculate. Complete these steps until all position title codes have been entered. Next, complete the agency admin section. Select the position title code from the drop-down menu and select the standard work week. Then enter the annual hours paid and the annual amount paid. The FTE will auto-calculate. Complete these steps until all position title codes have been entered. So the personal services for your employees are entered here. These employees receive a W-2 tax form from your agency. The agency admin section of Schedule CFR 4 is completed using position title code series 600. Remember to report the total salaries and wages for your agency administration staff. The position title codes are listed in Appendix R of the CFR manual. Select the position title code that best describes the duties of your employee. Some position title codes are limited to a specific agency. In this example, position title code 211 can only be used for OASIS programs. The position title codes in Appendix R of the CFR manual are classified in a numeric series: report support staff on the 100 series, direct care staff in the 200 series, clinical staff on the 300 series, production staff in the 400 series. Program admin staff are reported on the 500 series, agency admin staff reported on the 600 series, and the LGU staff are reported on the 700 series. If it becomes necessary to delete a position title code that was entered, simply click on the trash bin icon located to the right of the amount paid value, and the row of data will disappear. So in summary, the standard work week must be between 35 hours and 45 hours per week. The hours paid FTEs and the amount paid totals are shown by column. And where applicable, your employees' salaries and wages and hours should be allocated between programs and/or position title codes. The FTEs are calculated in the software. In this example, the calculation is shown. An employee that works part-time 22.5 hours a week for 40 weeks during the fiscal year is calculated to work 900 hours for the period. That is divided by the full-time hours for that position, which is 35 hours per week times 52 weeks, and that equals an FTE of 0.495. The total personal services reported on CFR 4 carry forward to a full CFR on Schedule CFR 1, line 16, and to Schedule CFR 3, line 1. And on abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated CFR, the total personal services from Schedule CFR 4 carry forward to DMH 1, line 6. Next, we'll go over Schedule 4A, Contracted Direct Care and Clinical Personal Services. To start, select the state agency, the program, and the site from the drop-down menus. Then select the position title code and enter the annual hours paid and the annual amount paid. The position title code series 200 and 300 are reported on the schedule. Contracted staff typically do not receive a W-2 from your provider agency. The position title codes are listed in Appendix R of the CFR manual. Remember that the hours paid field cannot be left blank. And the contracted direct care and clinical personal services total carries forward to Schedule CFR 1, line 35. In addition, it's important to note that the direct care hours and clinical hours are an important part of OPWDD's rate rationalization formula. Thus, it is important to enter the data accurately on this schedule. Also, Schedule 4A is only included in a full CFR submission type. And finally, if the contracted staff are not paid by the hour, an estimate of hours paid can be used. Entries of 0 or 1 hour will not generally be accepted. Next, we'll go over Schedule CFR 1, Program Site Data General Information. Schedule CFR 1 is completed for a full CFR submission, and the revenue and expenses on this schedule are reported on an accrual basis of accounting. To start, select the state agency, the program, and the site from the drop-down menus. Data on lines 1 through 6 and line 8 carry forward from the program site definition screen. Notice that those lines are grayed out. For Medicaid eligible programs, report both the Medicaid provider agreement number on line 7A and the national provider ID number on line 7B. Both numbers should be associated with the program site being reported. So it is critical that the units of service reported on line 13 of Schedule CFR 1 are accurate. Inaccurate reporting of units of service on this line is a cause for rejection of a submitted CFR. The unit of service measurement for the program can be found in appendices E through H, double H, and II. Also, for OASIS programs, units of service reported on the CFR must match the units of service reported to the OASIS monthly service delivery system for the period covered by the CFR. And for OMH programs, the units of service carry forward from Schedule OMH1 and Schedule OMH2. It's also important to remember that the units of service reported are reported on the date of service, not the date of payment. And units of service for which there is no payment accrued are still reported. So line 13 captures the total units of service, which is the sum of line 13A, Medicaid fee-for-service, line 13B, Medicaid managed care, and line 13C, all other units of service. Next, complete section B, which is the expenses section of Schedule CFR 1. The following are the expense categories on Schedule CFR 1. Report personal services that are carried forward from Schedule CFR 4 on line 16. Report the vacation accruals, which is the increase or decrease in vacation accruals from previous year on line 17. Report the mandated fringe benefits such as New York State Disability, FICA, Medicare on line 18. Report non-mandated fringe benefits such as health insurance, dental insurance, and pension expense on line 19. Report the repairs and maintenance such as contracts for housekeeping, garbage and snow removal on line 22. Report participant incidentals such as participant entertainment, recreation, clothing on line 26. Report expensed equipment on line 28. That is defined as the cost of all program site and or program administration non-adaptive equipment purchased during the cost period with a value of less than $5,000 or a useful life of less than 2 years. The contracted direct care and clinical personal services carries forward from Schedule CFR 4A and is reported on line 35. Report the supplies, materials expense, such as medical supplies, printing, copying, postage, etc. on line 36. And report on line 39 the expense of insurance for general liability, bonding, professional medical malpractice, vehicle and other insurance. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. Line 40 is the other line in the OTPS section. OTPS stands for other than personal services. To enter data on this line, click on the line detail box icon located to the right of the value field. When you click on that box, you will see that there will be a number of predefined entries that can be used to enter expenses, or you have the option of adding additional lines. So a common mistake that we see on desk audit is that a number of expenses are reported on line 40, which is the other OTPS line that should be reported on other lines. In this example, there were expenses for copying, printing, and postage reported on line 40 that should have been reported on line 36, supplies and materials, non-household. And there was expenses for rubbish removal that were reported on line 40 that should have been reported on line 22, repairs and maintenance. So in summary, there are miscellaneous line items, other line items where miscellaneous items are reported for OTPS, equipment and property expenses. This information is entered through a line detail box. Expense items of 1,000 or more require an individual line detail, and expense items of less than 1,000 each may be grouped in aggregate on a predefined line labeled all items less than 1,000 each. Bad debt expense is reported in several schedules on the CFR. On Schedule CFR 1, it's reported as a expense on line 40 and then adjusted out as non-allowable on line 66. On Schedule CFR 2, column 9, line 4, it's reported as an expense and adjusted out as a non-allowable expense on line 8. And Schedule CFR 3, line 17, is reported as an expense and adjusted out as non-allowable on line 41. For more information, please refer to the FAQ on page 8.13 of the CFR manual. Certain assets are depreciated on the CFR. Vehicle depreciation is reported on line 44. Equipment depreciation on line 45. Building depreciation on line 51. And building land improvements on line 52. All items with an individual cost of $5,000 or more and a useful life of 2 or more years must be depreciated. Please see Appendix O of the CFR manual for additional guidance on depreciation and amortization. So non-allowable costs and expenses are backed out of the CFR on line 66 of Schedule CFR 1. Negative numbers cannot be entered in the line detail box. Appendix X of the CFR manual details a list of non-allowable expenses for the CFR. And the related party transactions were disclosed on Schedule CFR 5 that are in excess of actual cost or fair market value are reported on line 66 as non-allowable. This is a screenshot of the software for line 66. Notice that this is a line detail box. When you click on the line detail box to the right of the value, you will be able to add lines to this line 66. OPWDD has added 2 additional lines, 68 F and G, to their OPWDD only informational section of Schedule CFR 1. This will be covered later in the presentation in the OPWDD specific changes. Next, complete the revenues section of Schedule CFR 1. Report participant fees on line 69, which are the revenues received from a program participant in excess of SSI and SSA. Report Medicaid fee-for-service revenue on line 72A and Medicaid managed care revenue on line 72B. Third-party revenue from private insurance is reported on line 74. Report federal grant revenue on line 79. There are a number of predefined entries on this line, including the Paycheck Protection Program, Federal Communications Commission grants, federal tax credits for COVID-19, and FEMA grants, to name a few. Report on line 80, state grants. There are also a number of predefined entries. Please note that the state aid that you receive from OMH, OPWDD, OASIS, and state ed is not reported on the state grant line. Report SNAP on line 82. And report monetary contribution revenue derived from gifts, legacies, bequests, and donations on line 83. Non-monetary donation contributions are reported as reconciling items on the reconciliation schedule if the schedule is required for your submission type. Additional information is available in an FAQ in section 8.0 of the CFR manual. Report prior period rate adjustments on line 86. This line is not applicable for OMH and OASIS. It is applicable for OPWD and state ed. Report the Medicaid recoveries for OPWD and D on this line, and report the reconciliation adjustments from a prior period for state ed. Report the state aid received by direct and local contract on lines 93 and 103, which is labeled net deficit funding. That includes state aid received directly from a DMH state agency and state aid received from a LGU, including a county LGU and a municipality LGU. Report other revenue on line 94. For OMH, that includes safety net payments and VAP, Medicaid revenue. For OASIS, that includes closely allied entity revenue. And for OPWDD, that includes assistive supports revenue, revenue for non-Medicaid eligible individuals under predefined OPWDD state aid. Report on line 97, the provision for bad debts as a deduction from revenue, provided the revenue was not reported net of the provision for bad debts. The presentation of the provision for bad debts on the CFR should be consistent with the presentation on the provider's audited income statement. And finally, there are other lines for miscellaneous items in the revenues, GAAP adjustments to revenues, and non-GAAP adjustments to revenue sections. Information is entered through a line detail box. There is detail required for revenue items of 1,000 or greater. And revenue items less than 1,000 can be grouped in aggregate on the predefined line, while items less than 1,000 each. And next, I will be passing you on to your next presenter.
Good morning. This is Nellie Gutos. I'm from the New York State Education Department, and I'm going to be talking to you about the agency fiscal summary and other agency parts of the CFR. But first, I'm going to tell you a story. There was this group of tourists that went to the Grand Canyon. The tour guide said, this canyon took millions and millions of years to carve out. And one of the tourists said, well, this must be a government project. So I have to tell you, this is definitely a government project, but we worked very, very hard on it, and we hope that you will find it very informational. And we didn't take a million years. Otherwise, we would have changed too many things in the meantime. So now the first form I'm going to talk to you about is the CFR2, the Agency Fiscal Summary. This form is going to be your favorite form to fill out. The reason I say that is because 90% of it is filled out for you. This agency fiscal summary, the purpose is to collect the data from all the different entities, well, from your entire entity into one column, the agency total, which is column 1, and columns 2 through 8 are the different agencies that you operate programs for. And column 9 is other. That's for other things that your entity may do, which may include management services for another group. It may include fundraising expenses, and also unrealized gains and losses are in the other column. Many times people think that fundraising is an agency expense, but it really should be reported under CFR 2(9) other. Going back to the agency total column, that is where the totals of your agency are. And you need to reconcile this with the certified financial statements if you file a full CFR. The people who do not have to file a full CFR are government entities, Article 28 abbreviated, and many abbreviated CFRs. Okay, so this summarizes the agency fiscal summary. The CFR 2 captures the expenses and revenues of the entire agency, which I just went over. And like I mentioned on the CFR 2, column 9, that is where you would put fundraising, unrealized gains and losses, and management expenses for other entities. That's the only part you enter from this form. The operating, on the CFR 2, the operating expenses reported on the CFR 2 are used to distribute agency administration between the CFR reporting programs, which includes the following expenses. You can see here, less any raw materials that you may have incurred. The reconciliation is required for any full CFRs, but if you're not a full filer, you are a government entity, an Article 28 abbreviated or a mini abbreviated CFR filer, you do not have to have certified financial statements to pass the validation test. Here is an example of the new form for the reconciliation of expenses. You see there's, for details for items that are reconciling items, there's a drop-down arrow, and you can add what those items might be. And here is for the revenues, the same sort of form, and you can enter any reconciling items to the CFR. The CFR 2A, the purpose of that is to collect data in a uniform way so we can do fiscal analysis industry-wide and look at statistics on an agency basis. This form is not required for individuals not filing a full CFR, government entities. It's basically only for providers that are for profits and not for profits, proprietary providers and not for profits. This is an example of the form. Here's more parts of it. The next form in the CFR I'm going to be talking about is a CFR 3 agency administration. This is part of the form that collects all the administrative costs associated with the overall direction of the agency. It's the record keeping and the financial management of your entity. The governing board activities, any public relations costs are related to fundraising are not reported here. They go back on the CFR 2 column 9. If you are not a full filer, we don't want to leave you out, so you do have to complete a CFR agency administration worksheet in lieu of a CFR 3. Here is an example of the new CFR 3 web-based version. On the CFR 3, like I said, there's personal services, vacation accruals, fringes, other than personal services related to the administration of your entity and the other items. Audit and legal and accounting is also on the CFR 3. It includes such thing as payroll, CFR audit. There's contracted personal services on line 14. And here are some examples that you may have to describe with further detail if they're in excess of $5,000. Insurance general, that's for general liability, bonding, professional malpractice, vehicles, or other insurance, but do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. Here is an example of the new CFR Web Agency 3, CFR 3 Agency Administration form. The OTPS equipment and property have other lines. If you have more than $1,000 in these items, you must detail them. There's a drop-down box for that. Many times agencies have adjustments for non-allowable costs. They are entered on line 41, where the description is entered and the line number that this expense is coming out of. Many times we see the mistake where they're saying it's coming out of the line line 41, but it should be the line where that item was actually reported on the CFR. If you want to have further details of what expenses may not be allowable, refer to Appendix X. And if you have any actual costs or fair market value for administrative related party transactions, should be disclosed on CFR 5. Any adjustments must be greater than or equal to 0. The net agency administration is the amount to be allocated using ratio value. Here's the form. The ratio value is done in a two-step process. First, it takes all the agency administration and allocates it by agency, and then it allocates it within each agency to the specific programs that each agency operates. Okay. And this tells you a little bit more about the two steps that I just explained, step 1 and step 2. This is for the agency administration worksheet for the abbreviated filers, which takes the place of the CFR3 for those providers. All agencies have administrative expenses, and they need to be distributed fairly. That's why we have ratio value as a method to allocate these expenses. Ratio value is based on operating costs. If you would like more details, see Section 15 of the CFR manual. And then there's more information in Appendix I and T. It's my turn to pass the baton.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Seward from OPWDD, and I will begin with CFR 5. The CFR 5 is required for all submission types, but Article 28 abbreviated. This schedule is used to report any transactions, including compensation, between the reporting entity, its affiliates, principal owners, management, and members of their immediate families and any other parties with which the reporting entity may deal when one party has the ability to significantly influence management or operating policies, such as, but not limited to, transactions between family members, like a key person of the provider or their relative having financial interest in the organization. If an individual has financial interest in both the service provider and the related organization, another entity has financial interest in the organization, and the service provider has financial interest in another entity. It should be noted for OASIS and OPWDD providers that the term related organization / and/or individuals is outlined in Article 25.06 of Mental Hygiene Law. And OASIS providers should also refer to the administrative and fiscal guidelines for OASIS providers. Further detail regarding accounting standards can be found in Section 18 of the manual. CFR 5 begins with 2 yes or no questions that must be answered. If the answer to both questions is no, you are done with this schedule and can move on to CFR 6. If yes is selected for question 1, you must fill out Section B for OASIS, OMH, SED, OPWDD, DOH, and OCFS providers, or else an error message will pop up. The same applies to question number 2. If this is answered yes for OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, DOH, and OCFS providers, then Section D must be filled out. If not, there will be another error message reminding you. If question number 1 was answered yes, Section B is where the details of the transaction are reported. You must select Add a Line at the bottom of the page to begin entering in the details. In column 2, the trans ID will automatically be generated by the CFRS web. In column 3, you must select 3 programs or sites that are affected before you can enter any data in the line. In column 4, you type in the description of the transaction, for example, a property lease rental. In column 5, this is pretty straightforward, the name of the related organization or individual. Column 6 is where the relationship to the provider is selected. More detailed descriptions of these options can be found in the manual in Section 18 in the relationship case. Column 7 is also straightforward. This is just the amount of said transaction. Column 8 is the total allowable cost of the transaction, which is the lower of the related organization or individual's actual costs, or the fair market value of providing the service or supply. Column 9 is calculated by subtracting column 8 from column 7. This cannot be entered directly. Lease or rental agreements reported in Section B must also be detailed in Section C. The expenses detailed in Section C should be the related organizations or individuals' actual costs in operating the building used by the service provider and not the rental payments made to the related organization or individual. If a space lease or rental transaction relates to more than 3 programs or sites, more detail should be provided for the 3 most affected program or sites listed in column 3 of Section B. Again, to begin filling out this section, you must click on Add a Line. In column 2, select the corresponding trans ID from Section B. In column 3, select the programs or sites affected. Columns 4, depreciation, 5, mortgage interest, 6, insurance, 7, property taxes must all be filled out. Any other expense should be completed in column 8, other. Any items entered in this column more than $1,000 must be listed in the worksheet separately by description and amount. Any items less than $1,000 may be aggregated and listed as all items less than $1,000 each with the combined total amount. Column 9 will automatically take the sum of the columns 4 through 8 for each item. Before moving on to the next section, make sure that any adjustments to allowable costs from column 9 are also reported on CFR 1, line 66, CFR 3, line 41, and DMH 1, line 13. All right, and now here is a screenshot of where the adjustment to the allowable cost from CFR 5 must also be reported on CFR 1. Line 66 in the description adjustment to lease, which is highlighted right there. Section D must be filled out by OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, DOH, and OCFS providers if question number 2 was answered yes, which was that the provider was asking if the provider received any financial assistance or if the provider provided financial aid. In column 2, the trans ID will be auto-generated. Column 3 lists the name of the party or individual. Columns 4 through 5 is the address line. Column 6, enter what kind of financial aid was received. Column 7, you must select either the funding to or funding from box. And in column 8 is the amount of said financial aid. And now we are moving on to the CFR 6. This schedule is used to report the salaries given to a provider's board members, employees under the title codes 601, 602, 603, which are the executive director or CEO, assistant executive director, and CFOs, comptrollers, and controllers, respectively. This schedule also includes any employees that earn more than $125,000 a year, whether that's through salary or contracted payments. Lastly, the top 5 highest paid independent contractors that receive more than $50,000 a year. The CFR 6 is required for all submissions except for the Article 28 abbreviated and mini abbreviated CFRs. If any employees serve on the governing authority, then select yes to the question in section 1. Please note that this question does not include a non-voting member that is on the board, like a president, executive director, or CEO. And here is a screenshot of section 1. If yes for this section is selected, it will then prompt the user to input the employee name and their title code. You must hit add a line to complete. Section 2 is where all compensated board members will be listed individually. If an employee is also on the board, only report their compensation solely as a board member. It is also important to note that the compensation does not include stipends or dinner meetings or any of the like. All right, continuing on with section 2. Amount paid, that's self-explanatory, along with the contracted payment amount. Any employee benefit like health insurance or retirement that is accessible by all employees must be reported in the fringe benefits column. Any other benefits that may be given out in place of money like awards or loans are reported as other benefits. To report on this line, you must add a line and fill in the description of the benefit and its cash value. Total compensation will total all other filled out columns automatically. You do not need to input this manually. In section 3, all 601, 602, and 603 positions are reported, along with all employees that have a yearly salary that exceeds $125,000, including salary and contracted payments. You must click Add a Line to begin reporting. Concerning the annualized salary, it is important to note that the result of the amount paid for the performance and completion of regular services, whether that's managerial, administrative, professional, direct care, support, or other services, divided by the FTE. If the FTE is greater than 1, the amount paid divided by 1 is calculated. Okay, and here is a screenshot of section 3. And it is an example showing if the other benefit in CFR 6, column 9 is a non-allowable cost. You can see here that Mary Reynolds, the CEO, received money for car expenses that was not given to all employees, thus making it an unallowable cost. This means that this expense will also have to be reported on CFR 3, line 41. And here is a screenshot of where the non-allowable cost of Mary's car expense will need to be listed on CFR 3, line 41. If this was missed initially, you would have to go back and adjust it manually in CFR 3. Section 4, the top 5 highest paid independent contractors are reported. These can be individuals or entities, and the compensation must be over $50,000 to be listed here. To add to this section, you would hit Add a Line, list the name of the contractor, and select the type of contractor in the drop-down in column 2, and report the amount paid during the reporting period. Okay. Now moving on to DMH1. All CFR types but the mini abbreviated must fill out the DMH1. Also exempt are providers for SED, DOH, and OCFS only programs. The data in the DMH1 is taken directly from the inputted data from the CFR1. If you need to change any data on this schedule, it has to be changed on prior schedules. If the program code has multiple inputs and has the same index code, that program type data will be aggregated into one column. If the program type has different index codes for each index code will be reported into its own column separately. If you are filling out an abbreviated or Article 28 abbreviated CFR, then the DMH1 will not automatically populate. It will have to be manually entered. The entered lines are reported by either program type or program site. The index code and program type together will rule whether a site is aggregated or not, like mentioned on the previous slide. Generally, if only one column is required, enter 00 for every occurrence. If there is multiple columns allowed, enter 01 for the first occurrence, then 02 for the second, and so on. Requirements for filling out the DMH1 include using the full accrual basis of accounting. If you are listing any equipment that is worth equal to or more $500 and has a useful life of 2 years or more, it must be depreciated on this schedule. For full and abbreviated CFR types, agency administration will be separated by New York State agencies in their programs, usually using the ratio, value, allocation methodology. All right, and here's a screenshot in the web for DMH1. The 3 tabs of sections of the DMH1 are at the top of the page: program units of service and expenses, program revenues, and program adjustment to revenues. Again, for full CFRs, the data will be transferred automatically to the DMH1. When filing abbreviated in Article 28 abbreviated, you must manually fill out this schedule. If additional items over 1,000 need to be reported on lines 30, 34, and 40, they require more detail. Remember, if you are filling out a full CFR, you must go back to CFR1 to enter this data, then it will transfer to DMH1. For example, go to line 94 on CFR1 and you will click on add a line on the bottom to input the detailed description and the dollar amount. Federal grants and state grants can be adjusted on lines 78 and 79 on CFR1 as needed. There are now specific lines to reflect PPP money, EIDL, and FEMA grants. If another line is needed, then you can simply use the Add the Line option at the bottom of the page. Here is another screenshot of the DMH1. Lines 1 through 2 are the program type and code. Lines 3 through 5 are the units of service. Lines 6 through 14 are expenses. Lines 15 through 31 are the revenues. The lines will be grayed out like above if filing a CFR, a full CFR, and you will be unable to input directly into this schedule. Lines 37 through 44 are the non-GAAP adjustments to revenue. At the bottom of this schedule, at the end, is a yellow DMH1 to DMH2 button. transfer button, it is highly encouraged to use this button to begin the claims section. If needed, the information can be changed manually in DMH2. And that ends the section for DMH1, and I will be turning it over now to the next speaker.
Thank you, Emily. All right, this is Ken Glenmeyer from OPWDD again. I just, obviously there was a lot of information that we just went over. We will be having a help function in the system. There's two ways to access it. It's going to be within the menu function itself, and the PDF will pop up. And then also, the help icon should be next to a schedule name if you're within that schedule, and it'll bring up the PDF for that specific schedule. Part of the, the help function is going to include what you see on screen is getting started. There's going to be the core reports. It's going to be submitting CFR. There's a bunch of different sections on the help function that are going to help you get through the process. Obviously, it can be complicated at times. So, obviously this training should help, but the help function itself will also give you a good understanding of how to get through a CFR. With that said, this concludes this session. We do appreciate everyone participating in the CFR training. In case you missed this from the beginning, please take the time to fill out the post survey after you leave the event. It's going to help us make this event better and better each year. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted online shortly. An email will be sent out notifying you of the location. It's going to be on YouTube, so OPWDD has its own page. It'll be in that location, but we'll send out the direct link to both sessions. Also, the Q&As will be carefully reviewed and answered. Answers will be posted online as soon as possible. So I'm going to leave the Q&As up for about 5 minutes after we actually end the recording. Just so everyone could get all their questions in that they want to get in. We'll save these questions and we'll get together and answer them with all the state agencies, and we'll post those online as soon as possible. With that said, thank you again, and we appreciate your attendance.